The substitution happened in the 67th minute, and 75,000 Bayern fans watched in confusion as Leon Goretzka walked off the pitch. By the time he reached the touchline, Joshua Kimmich was shouting instructions to his replacement loud enough for the entire stadium to hear. By the time the final whistle blew with the score still 1-1, the title race had tilted toward Dortmund. By Sunday morning, neither player had liked the other's Instagram post celebrating the draw. By Monday's training, Germany's national team had a problem bigger than any opponent, but it started with 8 words shouted across the Allianz Arena pitch, words that severed a 7-year brotherhood. You think because we're friends, I won't call out your laziness? You're not good enough anymore. Simple. Don't forget to subscribe to EliteBall Legends and like the video for your support. Thank you for subscribing. Joshua Kimmich had been at Bayern Munich for 9 years, and in that time, he had evolved from promising right back to complete midfielder to natural leader. At 29, he embodied everything German football demanded: discipline, precision, tactical intelligence, relentless work ethic. He was the player who never stopped running, never accepted mediocrity, never let standards drop. The captain's armband sat naturally on his arm, earned through consistency and character. But his perfectionism came with a cost. He demanded from others what he demanded from himself, and not everyone could meet those standards. Leon Goretzka had been at Bayern Munich for 6 years, and in that time, he had been Kimmich's partner in midfield, his roommate on Germany duty, his closest friend in football. At 29, they had grown up together in the national team, won the Champions League together in 2020, celebrated and suffered as brothers. Goretzka was power to Kimmich's precision, physicality to his technique, the muscle that complemented the brain. But at 29, injuries were accumulating, form was fluctuating, and the body that had been his greatest weapon was becoming a liability. The April evening at the Allianz Arena had started with pressure. Bayern sat 2 points behind Borussia Dortmund in the Bundesliga with 5 matches remaining. Der Klassiker, the rivalry that defined German football, the match that often decided championships. Thomas Tuchel's job was on the line. The squad was under immense scrutiny. Every player knew this was more than 3 points. This was identity, pride, the difference between success and failure. The pre-match dressing room had been tense, Tuchel pacing, delivering his tactical instructions with characteristic intensity. Bayern would press high, suffocate Dortmund's build-up, force mistakes. Kimmich and Goretzka would control the midfield, the partnership that had won titles, that knew each other's movements instinctively, that represented Bayern's beating heart. Kimmich had been methodical in his preparation, as always. Boots laced precisely, captain's armband adjusted perfectly, mind already in the match, visualizing scenarios, anticipating Dortmund's approach. He had caught Goretzka's eye across the room, nodded once, the silent communication of long-time partners. We've got this, like always. Goretzka had nodded back, but something in his body language betrayed concern. His right hamstring had been tight all week. The medical staff had cleared him, but he knew his own body. 29 felt different than 25. Recovery took longer, sharpness came slower, but this was Der Klassiker. This was Bayern. You played through discomfort. The match had started with intensity that Der Klassiker always delivered. Dortmund pressing aggressively, Bayern absorbing and countering. The midfield battle was physical and tactical, Kimmich orchestrating, Goretzka battling, both trying to impose control. The Allianz Arena was electric, 75,000 fans creating a wall of sound, red banners waving, drums pounding, the atmosphere of a title decider. Dortmund scored first in the 19th minute, Julian Brandt finishing a quick counter that exposed Bayern's high line. The stadium fell briefly silent, then erupted in frustrated noise. Tuchel was already gesturing from the touchline, faster transitions, tighter marking, more intensity. Kimmich had immediately taken control, demanding the ball, dictating tempo, trying to impose order on Bayern's response. But something was off in midfield. Goretzka wasn't arriving at second balls the way he usually did. His pressing was a step slow. His coverage was leaving gaps, small things barely noticeable to casual observers. But Kimmich noticed everything. "Leon, shift right, cover!" Kimmich's voice carried across the pitch during a break in play. Goretzka had adjusted, but Kimmich could see the grimace. The hamstring was affecting his mobility. He was compensating, playing within himself, trying to manage the discomfort. But Der Klassiker didn't allow for playing within yourself. Bayern equalized in the 34th minute, Harry Kane converting a penalty after being fouled. 1-1. The Allianz Arena erupted. Momentum shifted. Bayern was pressing forward, sensing Dortmund's vulnerability. This was the moment to push for the winner. But Goretzka was fading. By the 50th minute, his pressing had become token gestures. His runs into the box, usually powerful and dangerous, were absent. He was maintaining position, playing safe passes, managing his body through the match. Professional, experienced, smart. But not the Goretzka that Bayern needed. Kimmich was compensating, covering more ground, making extra runs, filling gaps that should have been shared. His frustration was building, not just at Goretzka, but at the situation, at the performance, at the sense that they were playing with 10 men when they needed 11. The 60th minute brought a sequence that crystallized everything. Dortmund broke forward, Adeyemi sprinting down the wing. Goretzka was supposed to track back, to provide defensive cover, but his legs were heavy, his hamstring protesting. He jogged rather than sprinted. Adeyemi crossed. Füllkrug headed just wide, a warning shot. Kimmich had spun around immediately, his face showing fury. "Leon, you have to track that run. What the fuck are you doing?" Goretzka had raised his hands, part apology, part frustration, part exhaustion. He was trying. His body wasn't cooperating. 2 minutes later, another sequence. A loose ball in midfield. Goretzka and a Dortmund player both arriving. The Goretzka of 3 years ago wins that ball with power and determination. The Goretzka of today arrived second, the ball going to Dortmund, another attack building. Kimmich was watching from 20 yards away. He could see it. His friend, his partner, was not performing. The question was whether it was injury, effort, or decline. And in that moment, Kimmich made a decision that would fracture everything. He gestured to the touchline, to Tuchel, to the bench. The universal signal. This player needs to come off. Tuchel had been thinking the same thing. In the 65th minute, he prepared the substitution. Number 8, Goretzka coming off. Number 42, Pavlovic going on. The fourth official raised the electronic board. Goretzka had seen his number. His face showed shock, then hurt, then resignation. Being substituted in Der Klassiker, in the title race, at home, it was a public statement of failure. He had begun the slow walk to the touchline, his hamstring now openly bothering him, the limp visible. As he approached the sideline, Kimmich had jogged over, but not to console, not to support, to give instructions to the replacement. "Pavlovic, stay tight on Brandt, don't let him turn, and for fuck's sake, actually press. Don't just watch like Leon was doing." The words were loud, intentionally loud, designed to be heard by Goretzka, who was 5 yards away, designed to be heard by the bench, designed to be a statement. Goretzka had frozen, his face transforming from hurt to fury. But he kept walking, didn't respond, professional enough not to create a scene. He shook Tuchel's hand mechanically, took his jacket from the assistant, and sat at the far end of the bench, away from everyone, alone with his thoughts. The match had continued. Bayern pushed for a winner, but Dortmund defended solidly. The final whistle blew with the score still 1-1, a draw that felt like a defeat. Dortmund remained 2 points ahead. Bayern had dropped crucial points at home. The title was slipping away. The Allianz Arena was silent as players walked off. No celebrations, no acknowledgement of fans. Just the weight of disappointment and missed opportunity. Kimmich had barely looked at the crowd, his face showing frustration and judgment. Goretzka had walked straight to the tunnel, not waiting for teammates. The dressing room was quiet, but tense. Players showered and changed with minimal conversation. Tuchel had given a brief speech. "We fight until the last match. Nothing is over." But everyone knew. Dortmund had the advantage now. Bayern's decade of dominance was threatened. Kimmich had been sitting at his locker, still processing the result, when he noticed Goretzka across the room. Their eyes met briefly. Goretzka's expression was cold, hurt, accusatory. Kimmich looked away first, and in that moment, both men knew something fundamental had broken. They left separately. No shared ride despite living in the same neighborhood. No text messages of consolation, despite 7 years of friendship. Just silence that spoke louder than any argument. Sunday morning brought the social media posts. Bayern's official account posted match highlights, thanking fans for support. Individual players posted their usual messages. Kane, not the result we wanted, we keep fighting. Neuer, disappointed but focused on next match. Standard footballer communication. Kimmich posted a photo of himself from the match, intense expression. Captain's armband visible. Caption, leaders push everyone to be better. No excuses. We need more from everyone. Mia san Mia. The message was clear to anyone who understood subtext. Everyone meant someone specific. Goretzka posted 20 minutes later. A photo from training, working with weights, his physique on display. Caption, some of us still putting in the work, some of us never stopped. Respect is earned on the pitch and off it. Yaja Mia san Mia. The Bayern dressing room noticed immediately. Players began choosing sides, those who agreed with Kimmich's standards, those who sympathized with Goretzka's situation. The team was fracturing along fault lines that hadn't existed 24 hours earlier. Monday's training session at Sabener Strasse was professional but uncomfortable. Kimmich arrived early, as always. Goretzka arrived on time, changed quickly, avoided the captain. During warm-ups, they were on opposite sides of the group. During tactical drills that required them to partner in midfield, they communicated only what was absolutely necessary. Short, switch, hold, one-word instructions without eye contact. The coaching staff noticed. Tuchel pulled them both aside after training, his expression serious. What happened Saturday stays on the pitch. You two are professionals. You're Germany teammates. You figure this out. Nothing to figure out, Kimmich said, his voice flat. We needed better performance. We didn't get it. That's football. I was injured, Goretzka said quietly. Then you tell the manager you can't play. You don't go out there at 70% in the most important match of the season. I was trying to help the team. By jogging around and watching Dortmund attack, that's not help. That's a liability. Tuchel stepped between them. Enough? This is exactly what I'm talking about. Your teammates. Act like it. But the damage was already beyond management. This wasn't tactical disagreement. This was personal. The week continued with growing tension. Germany's national team manager Hansi Flick called both players. The European Championships were 3 months away. Germany needed their midfield partnership functional. But Flick quickly realized this went deeper than one match. Joshua tells me you weren't fit enough to play, Flick said to Goretzka on the phone. Joshua tells everyone everything, Goretzka replied bitterly. Joshua's job is to judge everyone and find them lacking. That's his leadership style. And Leon tells me you question his commitment, Flick said to Kimmich in a separate call. I don't question his commitment. I question his professionalism. If you're injured, don't play. If you play, actually play. Don't give 50% and expect praise for showing up. Flick had sighed. This was worse than he thought. You two need to resolve this before the national team camp. Germany can't afford this division. With respect, Hansi, Germany needs players who give everything, not players who coast on past reputation. The media picked up on the tension by Wednesday. Training photos showed Kimmich and Goretzka at opposite ends of drills. German football journalists started asking questions in press conferences. Is there a problem between Kimmich and Goretzka? Has the midfield partnership broken down? Tuchel deflected professionally. They're both excellent players, both committed to Bayern. Any tension is my responsibility to manage. But behind closed doors, he was furious. He had pulled Kimmich into his office Thursday morning. You're the captain. Your job is to unite, not divide. My job is to demand excellence. Leon wasn't excellent. Someone needed to say it. You humiliated him publicly, in Der Klassiker, on television. That's not leadership. That's cruelty. Kimmich's face had shown no remorse. Cruelty is accepting mediocrity and watching this club lose its standards. Leon is a great player, was a great player, but at some point, we have to acknowledge reality. And you're the judge of that reality? Someone has to be. You're the manager. You made the substitution. I just made sure everyone knew why it was necessary. Tuchel had stared at his captain, recognizing something troubling. Kimmich's perfectionism had crossed into righteousness. His leadership had become judgmental. The line between demanding excellence and destroying teammates was blurring. Saturday brought another match, Bayern versus Mainz, a match they needed to win to maintain any title hope. Tuchel started both Kimmich and Goretzka again, partly because they were still his best midfield option, partly to force them to work through their issues. The match was professional, but joyless. Bayern won 2-0, Kane scoring both goals, but the midfield partnership looked mechanical, functional, without fluidity. Kimmich and Goretzka both performed their duties, but the telepathic connection that had been their trademark was absent. They were playing together without playing together. After the match, Müller, the veteran, the dressing room leader, the voice of reason, had called an informal players' meeting. No coaches, just the squad. "We have a problem," Müller started, his usually jovial expression serious. "Two of our most important players aren't speaking. That's affecting the whole team. We need to fix this." The room was silent. Players looked between Kimmich and Goretzka, waiting to see who would speak first. Kimmich spoke. "There's nothing to fix. Leon knows what's expected. When he meets those expectations, we have no problem." "That's not a solution, Joshua," Müller said firmly. "That's an ultimatum. Football is about performance, not feelings." Goretzka finally spoke, his voice controlled but cold. "You want to talk about performance? Let's talk about yours. You covered 11.2 kilometers against Dortmund. I covered 10.8. The difference isn't laziness, Joshua. It's that I played with a hamstring injury I disclosed to medical staff. But you don't ask questions. You don't check context. You just judge. You shouldn't have played if you were injured. I played because my captain and my team needed me. I played through pain because that's what you do for your brothers. But apparently, you're only my brother when I'm perfect." The room was electric now. Other players watching the confrontation, recognizing this was the heart of it. Kimmich's impossibly high standards meeting Goretzka's human limitations. "You want to know the truth?" Kimmich's voice was rising. "You've been declining for 2 years. We all see it. The injuries are more frequent. The recovery is slower. The performances are inconsistent. You're not the player you were in 2020. And instead of acknowledging that, instead of working twice as hard to compensate, you want sympathy and understanding. This is Bayern München. We don't do sympathy. We do excellence." Goretzka stood, his face showing more hurt than anger. "You think I don't know? I'm not 25 anymore. You think I don't feel my body breaking down? I've given everything to this club, to Germany, to you. And when I need support, when I need my partner to have my back, you tell me I'm not good enough. You tell the whole world I'm not good enough. If you're looking for someone to lie to you, I'm not that person. I'm not looking for lies. I'm looking for basic human decency from someone I called my best friend. Football isn't about friendship. It's about winning. And we're not winning because players like you can't accept reality." Goretzka had walked out. No dramatic exit. Just a quiet departure that somehow felt more devastating than any shouting match. The dressing room remained silent. Even Kimmich looked unsettled, as if hearing his own words reflected back showed him something he didn't like. Müller shook his head. "You might be right about performance, Joshua, but you're wrong about how to lead. Leaders don't break their teammates. They build them up even when they're struggling. That's the difference between being the best player and being the best captain." The words had hung in the air. Kimmich said nothing, just sat with his thoughts, the weight of judgment now on him. The next week brought the inevitable. Germany announced their European Championship squad. Both Kimmich and Goretzka were included, but Flick made an unusual public statement. "I've spoken with both players. They've assured me their partnership on the pitch remains strong. What happens at club level stays at club level." The message was clear. Fix this, or both of your national team careers are at risk. The breakthrough came in an unexpected place. A Germany training camp, 2 weeks before the Euros. A tactical session where Kimmich and Goretzka were paired together, working on set-piece positioning. No crowd, no pressure, just 2 players and a ball. They worked in silence for 20 minutes, each pass technically perfect, but emotionally dead. Then Goretzka had spoken quietly. "I saw the specialist last week. The hamstring needs surgery. I'm getting it after the Euros." Kimmich had stopped, the ball at his feet. "How long have you known?" "Since February, but I wanted to play through the season, help Bayern, help you." "You should have told me." "Would it have changed anything?" you would have still seen it as weakness. Kimmich had been quiet for a long time. Then, maybe, maybe I would have. That's what hurt, Joshua. Not the criticism, not the substitution. That you assume laziness before asking if I was okay. 7 years, and you assume the worst of me. I assumed you'd tell me if something was wrong, the way we always have. You made it very clear that admitting weakness wasn't acceptable. Your standards don't allow for human limitations. They had stood there, 10 yards apart, the truth settling between them. I don't know how to lower my standards, Kimmich admitted finally. If I accept less, where does it stop? How do we stay excellent? Excellence and compassion aren't opposites. You can demand greatness while acknowledging that sometimes great players are injured, tired, declining. The best captains know the difference. Kimmich had nodded slowly. I owe you an apology, not for demanding more, but for how I did it, for making it public, for assuming rather than asking. I owe you one too, for not telling you about the hamstring, for playing through it and giving less than my best without explanation, for expecting you to just understand without communication. They had embraced then, not the quick professional hug of teammates, but the longer embrace of friends who'd hurt each other and were beginning to heal. After your surgery, Kimmich said, I'll be there during recovery, however long it takes. Even if I'm not perfect, especially then. The Euros came. Germany reached the semifinals, Kimmich and Goretzka, playing together with something approaching their old connection. Not perfect, but functional, professional respect, rebuilding toward friendship. Goretzka had surgery in July, 6 months recovery. Kimmich visited regularly, bringing food, watching matches together, talking about football and life and everything they'd avoided discussing for years. The forced separation created space for healing. By the next season, Goretzka had returned. Not the same player. You never come back the same after major surgery at 29. But smarter, more tactical, adapting his game to his body's new limitations. And Kimmich had learned to adjust his demands, to recognize that leadership required flexibility, that the greatest captains knew when to push and when to support. They never recaptured the magic of 2020. That required youth and health they no longer possessed. But they built something different, a partnership based not on perfection, but on understanding, on acknowledging that excellence came in many forms, that sometimes the greatest strength was admitting weakness. Years later, when both had retired, they'd reflect on that April night in the Allianz Arena as the moment that almost destroyed them, but ultimately made them better, not as players, but as men. Kimmich would admit that his perfectionism had been a mask for fear of decline, of losing control, of watching the career slip away. Goretzka would admit that his silence had been pride, an unwillingness to show vulnerability even to those closest to him. The lesson was simple, but hard learned. Football, like life, was not about being perfect. It was about being honest, about communicating, about remembering that the people you play beside are human, flawed, struggling, doing their best even when their best wasn't enough. In the end, the greatest partnerships weren't defined by never having conflict. They were defined by surviving it,